This is very reminiscent of the trenches in the First World War.
It seems to me, and you sign off or you take issue with my analysis here. It seems to me that we now have a sense for what both sides want. And the question is, can there be some sort of negotiated settlement / ceasefire? And I've got an idea of how this ends, but I want to see if you sign on or if you think it goes a different direction. The thing that Russia wants the most is the province of Donetsk, or however you pronounce it. And it seems quite clear that that is their primary aim here. And they have about 80% of it so far, and they want 100% of it. Right now, Ukraine is saying we will not give up any land. I understand that argument. I think that is past. There is no world in which Ukraine does not have to give up land. The question is how much. What Ukraine most wants is some form of security guarantee. And it seems to me that there is a resolution of this conflict that would potentially look something like what happened with North and South Korea. I don't know that you have a demilitarized zone necessarily, but we still have a ton of troops in South Korea. Technically, that war has never really ended, but we provided security guarantees, and as a result, there is a sort of a tenuous peace that is now extended for multiple generations. That feels to me like the most likely outcome here. Ukraine gets some form of security guarantee. Russia gets more of the Ukrainian land, and we have a tenuous peace that is put in place with the security guarantee in some way, trying to act as a major point of dissuading Russia from ever invading more parts of Ukraine going forward. Do you sign off on that idea, that framework in general? If not, what do you think needs to be added to the equation?
Yes, we now know after the meeting with Trump and Putin, which I saw, of course, a lot of people in the media who are anti-Trump were rushing to say, see, they don't have a deal. There wasn't going to be a deal because Ukraine's not there. It's about laying the groundwork for a deal. This is the biggest, nastiest, most horrible conflict, military conflict in the world right now. It is not something that you can just snap your fingers and it goes away. Trump is trying to bring this to a conclusion. If he does so, it will be the most successful act of diplomacy from an American president in, I don't know, Clay, since Reagan bringing down the Berlin Wall and ending the Cold War. I mean, really, you'd have to go back quite. Nothing Clinton did, nothing Bush did, certainly nothing Obama did, and Biden wasn't even really president, as we know. So this is high stakes, the highest stakes. And yes, you're right. This is really what it comes down to. You have the Ukrainians who don't want to cede even more territory than the Russians currently have. And that's what the Russian demand is right now is we want everything we've got and then some to stop this war. That's what's come out of this sit down with Trump and Putin. The Ukrainian demand is, look, before we could even say we'll give you anything, we need to know that this is really it. You know, it's a little bit like if you're being blackmailed. What's the big question for somebody? And this is a form of blackmail in a sense, this invasion, right? The big question is, okay, if I give you a bag of money, is this the last bag of money? Or are you going to show up every 6 months demanding more? Is Russia going to just think this is a pause and then they can take more of Ukraine? That's where the security guarantees come in. Now, Clay, the challenge on the security guarantee front is that starts to sound a lot like NATO Article 5 to people, which is a huge red line for Putin and has been all along. And I think for a lot of Americans, too, it would be, hold on a second. So now if Russia does decide to go more, we are going to, send in troops or we are going to be military. Now, I'm sure what's happening is it's going to be European partners, financial and economic sanctions arrayed. The problem, though, is that that's not enough. And this is something that we've all seen over and over again. Sanctions are a tool. They are not an answer. They were not an answer in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. They were not an answer with, the Gaddafi thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could say about that. But sanctions alone, because he was actually going in our direction when we decided to topple, when the Obama-Clinton apparatus decided to topple him. But sanctions alone don't just end things for you. So, Clay, this is where This is where the detailed negotiations really matter. What is a security guarantee? What security guarantee for Ukraine is sufficient other than we will put U.S. troops in harm's way, or U.S. troops will be the cavalry if, after this deal, Russia decides to restart hostilities? I don't see us doing that. I don't think we should do that. And so then what's a realistic security guarantee for a country that the UK, Russia, and America all promised when it gave up its nukes? Big mistake. We will guarantee your security 40 years ago or whatever it was. So this is tough stuff.
I'm sympathetic for Ukraine because, as you hit on, it's not that they're concerned about necessarily how this conflict resolves. It's that the last decade plus of Russian behavior has shown them that they never stop. They always want another bite at the apple. And I believe Ukraine's position is we have a very strong defensive works. And if we give up this particular part of our country, that is going to gum up the apparatus to allow us to have a strong defensive line going forward, to say nothing of the fact that Ukraine believes this is their line, that it's their territory, and they don't want to give it up. So I think that's the challenge.
This has turned it to really understand, and I've been, over the weekend, I was kind of going through as much of the more detailed analysis of this as I could, Clay. This is World War I trench warfare with drones and satellite communications. That's where we are. So you have a very detailed, the Wall Street Journal had this layout of the fortifications. They have a 6-layer fortification barrier, and everyone's saying, kind of like a Maginot Line, which of course does not, historically, the French Maginot Line did not work out well. But this one is being specifically built to be anti-tank as well in nature. So the way the Journal laid it out, they've got barbed wire and metal coils that are low visibility, to intentionally entrap and ensnare Russian, not just armor, but the Russians have been using motorbikes to try to just break through small areas in the lines. Then it's an anti-tank ditch. Then it is anti-vehicle barriers they call dragon's teeth, these cement pyramids that they're putting down. All of you who are GWAT veterans, remember the HESCO barriers, Jersey barriers, HESCO barrier? Huge thing was these big cement blocks, essentially, to stop vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. Then there's a second anti-tank ditch, Clay, and then a third anti-tank ditch with mines, and then a 6th layer of additional barbed wire and metal coil. So this is very reminiscent of the trenches in the First World War. It's just higher technology, and they have to be very cognizant of these drones, these anti-personnel drones that are coming down at you from the sky, right? So it's almost like artillery rounds, but they're smart rounds in that someone is using a camera to find you and get you. And it is brutal warfare. A lot of people are being caught up in the coils and the wire, and then they wait, and a drone circling overhead, and the drone comes in and blows them up.
Trump said, and I don't know how accurate this is because sometimes casualties get conflated with deaths. Trump said 20,000 Russian troops died in July. Again, that is the most recent number that I've heard publicly out there. Now, maybe it's 20,000 casualties because, again, sometimes those numbers get used in fluctuating ways. I think it's clear that hundreds of thousands of people have been severely injured and or killed on both sides of this fight so far. And so, really, I do think the benefit of the meeting in Russia with Russia in Anchorage is we now know, I think, somewhat what Putin wants. And a lot of people are focused on, well, we didn't get an immediate ceasefire, and I understand that. That would be better in theory. But really, the goal is peace. It's not a ceasefire. And so Ukraine's going to have to give up land, and there's going to have to be some sort of security guarantee that is put in place.
I think the asterisk, though, Clay, is we know what Putin wants now. And I think that's where there's a big stumbling block here for Ukraine. That's what gets into security guarantees. If they could be certain that the territory that Russia already has, maybe plus a little bit, would be the end of this, that's one thing. I think they feel that this war has been going on, not just since the major invasion, but before that, the Russian Maskarovka, the deception war, there's some separatists who are all just Russians being ordered out of Moscow, that it would be a ceasefire and then give it some time, and then the Russians break through again, right? Because why not? And so I think that's where this becomes really hard. You have to be damn sure on the Ukrainian side, and Zelensky does, that whatever the concessions are, it'll be like North and South Korea, where you're not just going to punch through that line and do whatever you want afterwards. And that's been going on for a long time.
Which is why I think maybe a solution here is some form of demilitarized zone. I know it's more complicated because no one lives in the demilitarized zone, and this would theoretically be places where people have been living. But that seems to me the best way to potentially solve
that's
it.
Basically what they're building. I mean, when you're talking about the expansive, it's hundreds of miles of these fortifications, Clay. It's World War I redux in that sense. I mean, it's not a few places where they're dug in. They're dug in along an entire front of hundreds of miles. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy what they have built.
That's what this war has turned into. So it's very tough stuff. I still have a lot of faith. I even think it's the wrong thing to say, because I heard Marco Rubio talking about this over the weekend. It's not just I have faith that if anyone can get this done, it's Trump. The only person who can get this done is Donald Trump. And that is not some Trump worship thing. That is the truth. The only person who could bring this together at this point in time, who has the gravitas, who's in a position to bring this horrible war that's killing hundreds of thousands of people to an end, is Donald Trump. And I just say that because everyone, especially Ukraine flag-waving Slava Ukraini Americans and Europeans, should be rooting for maximum success here. And anything short of that, I think, is a really ugly manifestation of Trump derangement syndrome. We'll get into more of this. We'll take your calls on this as well here. If your cell phone service is with Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, you're overpaying. And what you're mostly paying for are thousands of retail stores you never go into. You're paying for sponsorships you'll never benefit from, and you're paying a massive premium for what you think is superior 5G service. But guess what? That's not true, because Pure Talk uses the same 5G network on the same 5G towers. The only difference, Pure Talk doesn't overcharge you for their cell phone service. You get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data for $25 a month. That's less than half the price of the big guys during a time when saving a buck really matters. And with Pure Talk, you can keep your phone and your number. Do this from your cell phone, dial pound 250, and say the keyword Clay and Buck. You'll save an additional 50% off your first month. You can literally be switched over to Pure Talk in about 10 minutes time. Dial pound 250, say the keywords Clay and Buck, and switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans.